Today I'm going to show you a great dinner roll recipe that only needs to rise for about 20 minutes so you can have it ready for even a quick weeknight.
To make 12 rolls, you'll need 440 grams of flour plus a bit extra as necessary, 10 grams of quick rising yeast, which if you're using the packets will be 1.5 packets, 7 ounces of warm water, 5 grams of kosher salt, 42 grams of honey, 1 whole stick of unsalted butter, and 1 large egg. You can of course scale this recipe to make more or less rolls, but I found that 12 rolls will fit perfectly into a 10-inch cast iron skillet, which is what I like to use for this recipe. So the first thing we'll need to do is prepare the dough. Combine the yeast, water, and honey in a medium bowl and whisk until thoroughly combined. You can also do this in a stand mixer if you have one. As that's sitting, melt 1/2 stick or 1/4 cup of butter. This will allow a bit of time for the yeast to get a head start on activating, which will help our rolls to rise extra quickly, and on top of that, the honey will provide some sugar for the yeast to break down. Next, add the melted butter, egg, and salt and stir until everything is thoroughly incorporated. Finally, add the flour about 1 cup at a time as you continue to stir. Once all of the flour is added, the dough should form a rough ball and detach from the sides of the bowl. If your dough is still sticking to the bowl, just add more flour a little bit at a time until your rough ball forms. At this point, transfer your dough to a floured surface and knead until a relatively smooth ball is formed, which should take about 5 minutes. The dough will be a bit sticky, so feel free to dust your hands and add a bit more flour to the dough, but only as necessary. If you add too much, your final product won't end up as light and airy by the time it's baked. Once you have your smooth ball, divide your dough into 12 equal-sized pieces. Roll each piece into a little ball and place them evenly spaced in your skillet or baking pan. Now, just preheat your oven to 400 degrees and leave the dough in a warm place for about 25 minutes to allow it to rise. You could get away with about 15 to 20 minutes if you're really in a hurry, but the longer you wait, the lighter and fluffier your rolls will end up being. After about 30 minutes, you can see that the rolls have about doubled in size and filled the pan nicely. Now, there's just one final step before baking, which is adding some additional melted butter on top. So a little trick I like to use here is to dissolve some salt into my butter after I've melted it. This will make a huge difference in bringing out the flavors of the roll. Now, you're probably thinking, why not just use salted butter in the first place? I like to use unsalted butter because it allows me to control the exact amount of salt that goes into the recipe. I've also found that salted butter doesn't have as much salt as I'd like anyways, so I end up having to add more regardless. So anyways, just spoon the butter onto the rolls, or better yet, if you have a pastry brush, you can use that to brush it on to get a more even coating. Feel free to be a bit generous here. Since the rolls have relatively few ingredients, this butter on top is what's really going to add a lot of flavor and richness to them, and it'll help them to brown nicely in the oven. But we'll also be coating them in more butter after they come out of the oven, so I just added about 1/4 stick of butter for now, and we'll add the other 1/4 stick later. Now throw the pan in your preheated oven for about 15 to 18 minutes until the tops of the rolls are lightly brown. Once the rolls look done, remove them from the oven and spread the remaining melted butter over top and sprinkle them with a bit of kosher salt for garnish. So there you go. These rolls are great for a Thanksgiving meal or any other dinner, but I also like to use them for breakfast sandwiches or even as a bun for a burger. The possibilities really are endless, and you'll just never be able to beat homemade rolls, especially when they're fresh out of the oven. So if you try this recipe out, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you like the video,